right. That was starting with a bang, but a beautiful bang actually there from Sebastian, who you'll be hearing from soon. Let me just welcome everybody to this event, Europe for Scotland. It's a kind of gloomy anniversary. Actually, some people would need some reminding that it was 6 years ago, precisely today. Guys, can you mute your microphones, please? I'm hearing some snorting in the background. 6 years ago, when the Brexit vote took place. And of course, you all know, those of you watching, what happened. We were all sitting, I think, fairly confident that the idea would be rejected. And then, lo and behold, we went to bed, woke up in the morning, and basically Nigel Farage had won. England had voted to leave. Scotland had voted to remain by a pretty overwhelming amount. Northern Ireland too. Wales had gone the other way. But given the population strengths in the various nations, and given the fact that this United Kingdom of nations doesn't operate like that at all, and basically it is the winner who takes all, and the largest contingent in the United Kingdom, English voters, really carried through a very hard Brexit, and the rest has been an awful history, actually, that's brought us to where we are today. But actually, just for once tonight, we're not here to be particularly gloomy about this, because what's been happening, and the reason for this event tonight, is that a lot of Europeans have looked aghast at what happened in Britain. Perhaps for many of them because they live in countries that wouldn't dream of ordering one of the nation states that supposedly has the world's most powerfully devolved parliament to just toe the line and to leave a union that Scots voted to remain inside. So this isn't a chance for the folk who are behind Europe for Scotland, which formed, gosh, it seems to me it was last year, but I'm sure I'm going to be corrected that it was longer, to try to get Europe mobilised to express to Scotland the solidarity people still feel with an independent country rejoining the European Union. And to let everybody really give their reasons. We have about 7 ambassadors from different countries tonight who are undertaking to campaign for Scotland in their countries. And when, as part of the steering group, when I was involved in that and was listening to their stories, I thought, everybody needs to hear this. This would warm the cockles of your heart, actually, to listen to people who have no real reason to want to put themselves out for Scotland, and yet are prepared to do it and are doing it right now. So that's the reason that this event is being held. I'm delighted that so many people have pitched up, partly because the weather's so great, a bit unusually in Scotland, that I could well imagine other things beckon. But thank you for all coming tonight. I'm just going to speak briefly now to the joint campaign coordinators, Andrea Pisauro, who's from Italy originally, and Nina Yetter, who's from Germany. Now, these two guys are in Oxford. Gosh, one of you has got quite a noisy thing happening in the background, but let's just let it go. So let's just start off with getting how Europe for Scotland started, Nina.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yes, hello, first of all, to everybody watching. Thank you so much for tuning in. And yeah, so we've been around for just over a year, really. We started in spring last year with an open letter addressed to EU politicians, urging them to make clear that Scotland would be welcome back in the EU. This open letter was signed by by almost 200 intellectuals from all over Europe, like from each and every EU country, from all UK nations as well. We were very happy that we also had quite a lot of people from England. And just to mention a few of the people, I don't know, I think we have some pictures prepared, but we had some really famous people in Scotland signing the petition, including, of course, Val McDermott, William Boyd, and Sam Ewan, and Brian Cox, who is like one of my absolute favorite actors, and many others. I'm sorry, I don't see the picture right now, so I feel like I'm forgetting a lot of people. We also had a lot of famous writers from all over Europe, like Ian McEwan, Elena Ferrante, who's not known to step out and sign petitions, so that was really amazing. Sophie Oksan from Finland, Conta Bean from Ireland, and generally we feel like I wouldn't be surprised if one of our signatories got a Nobel Prize for Literature sometime soon. And one thing that was also really important to us was that we wanted to bear in mind who this letter is addressed to, namely EU politicians. So we also asked a lot of democracy scholars to sign that might not be household names across Europe, but that are very well known and influential on the EU, on their thinking. So that includes people like Merrick Haldor, that includes people like Philippe Van Parijs, who was named one of the 20th most important thinkers in our time. I feel very bad that these pictures are not shown right now because I feel like I'm forgetting a lot of people. But yeah, we are extremely proud that we got such amazing signatories. And as a result, we also got enormous press coverage all over Europe at the time. Our letter was published in 10 European countries simultaneously when it was first launched. And then we also were invited by the Foreign Press Association to present our letter to foreign journalists, which led to coverage all over the world, like including places like China and South America, Australia, Canada. So I think there's huge interest in Scotland, actually, all over Europe, of course, but also all over the world.
Indeed, and I'm just having a quick look at the names here myself, but the ones that really kind of surprised me was Eno. Even that's just showing my age, actually. But collaborator with David Bowie and many other people besides William Boyd, the novelist. And they're lovely, lovely quotes, actually, if they're able to come up now. Here's from the first signatories. I hope everyone can see that. Yes, there's a lot of names, Neil. Well, of course, the ones that are kind of British probably are the ones that people can identify here. I wonder, Carmen Khalil, who was the founder of Virago, do we have actually the quotes? Is there any quotes, Kevin, from any of these speakers, these signatories rather?
Well, we can say that back then the Guardian was citing Ian McEwan, who said that Europe should hang out a welcome sign for Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really beautiful quote, I thought. But we also had a lot of really lovely quotes, especially actually from people in Scotland that were talking about the ancient connections that they feel with Europe, like the old alliance between Scotland and France was brought up a lot. Yeah, that's. But we are going to talk about this a little later.
Indeed. So let me ask Andrea now. Why did you guys bother? What's it all about? What's the feeling as well as the sort of rational thing for you? Because you put a heck of a lot of energy into this, and you're not Scottish. I mean, why?
Well, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I guess first and foremost, it's out of a sense of justice. I think we all saw what happened in the last few years with Brexit. We all saw that there was a democratic injustice in the way in which Scotland was dragged out of the EU. Of course, we are not just talking about Scotland's rejection of Brexit 6 years ago. And I remember it very well because I was in Glasgow at the time. I spent 3 beautiful years in Scotland and I campaigned with many people against Brexit. I remember how many people were heartbroken, but also the fact that in Scotland, the campaign won by a huge margin. But that's not just the end of the story, because for the years I followed that, Scotland institutions tried to put forward compromises which were ignored by the UK government. Repeated attempt to say that a voting pattern of that kind should only result in a compromised Brexit, in a soft Brexit, were completely ignored by the UK government. And so there is this democratic injustice that is generating in me, that I was there with many Scottish friends at the time, a sense of outrage. But then I guess it's not just this, because in a way, Nina and I have been campaigning and we believe in building a better, more democratic, more socially just European Union. And we did so even at the beginning of the pandemic, when we wrote an open letter demanding the creation of Eurobonds, because we thought at the time that a pandemic should not create problems between countries. So there should be a united European response that doesn't let any country left alone. And indeed, at the beginning of the pandemic, as you probably know, the European Union agreed on Eurobonds and a recovery fund to finance the transition to climate neutrality. And so we want to have a better European Union. We believe that Scotland rejoining the EU would be good for Europe, because Scotland is standing up for the rule of law, international law, as a very good democratic system, which is admired in Europe. In comparative terms, it's a very good democratic electoral system. And also, Scotland can contribute to a humane immigration policy, can help with the energy transition. So we think there are a lot of good reasons why Scotland could help the EU. And then a final point, I guess, is that we now live in England, in NI, and paradoxically, we do think that Scotland independence would be good for England too. And this is a conversation that we had for a long time with Anthony Barnett, who was also one of the main initiators of this call together with us. And we discussed how, in a way, England has a problem of expressing its identity, because it's trapped as well in this imperialistic tegument, as Anthony often puts it, of the Westminster system with the privileges, the lords, all this system that block any real democratic process in England. And Scotland becoming independent would be the way to arrive to a reckoning in England that would spell the end of Brexit, as we put in an event a few weeks ago.
Right. Okay. There's loads of reasons there. Let's now say goodbye just for a moment to Nina and Andrea, because we're going to start having our ambassadors appear. Now, this might sound kind of odd, because you'll think, actually, that's really something for a Scottish government to appoint, isn't it? But actually, the work that these folk are doing is to go into their countries, to undertake, to try to lobby on Scotland's behalf, and to try and get little groups together who become more aware about Scotland's plight and are ready to move as soon as independence, or the the independence referendum campaign begins to jump into life, so that we don't have all the kind of red herrings and blockages that appeared, and lies actually, that appeared in the last referendum campaign with regard to the EU. So let us now leap to our to our ambassadors. The first is Sarah De Sanctis, who's, well, Italy and Slovakia, but a translator, but based in Rome. So Sarah, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Lovely. So, thanks very much. And welcome to everyone who joined in. It's really beautiful that we're doing this. I'm really excited. So yes, as you said, Leslie, I am half Italian and half Slovak. I also lived in the UK for 5 years, and then I lived in Spain for 3. And being a translator, I work with European languages on a daily basis. That's how I make my living. So long story short, I really consider myself European first. I really believe in Europe's potential, and I'm really, really grateful for all the amazing things that they've already done for us. So that is why when Brexit happened, I remember I was living in London at the time. I took it very badly and quite personally. As Andrea mentioned earlier, like I too was really heartbroken in a very meaningful and personal way. And I didn't have to leave. It's not like my job required it or anything, but I just chose to leave as soon as I could, because I just didn't really want to stay anymore. And Scotland and the way you guys rejected Brexit overwhelmingly was always a great source of hope and inspiration for me. I think if there is a place where Brexit can come to an end, or at least be mitigated in its damage, it's going to be Scotland for sure. So as soon as I read about this open letter, I just emailed immediately and said, like, how can I help? I'll do anything. This is really beautiful. I want to be a part of this. And on a more personal note, I've been to Scotland many times, also for months on end. And every time the people have been so, just progressive, cosmopolitan in spirit, just warm, welcoming. I always felt at home there. So that's one of the reasons, in addition to my love of whiskey, to be honest, and obviously your amazing landscapes, which are really, I think Scotland is one of the most beautiful places on earth. these are the reasons why my husband and I decided to get married in Scotland a couple of years ago. So obviously Scotland has a very, very important and dear place in my heart, and I cannot wait to see it back in the EU where I think it belongs.
Wow, that's brilliant. Where did you get married, by the way?
In the middle of Glencoe.
In the
Because
middle of Glencoe.
you can get married anywhere in Scotland, which is lovely. It's the only place in the UK where you can do that. You don't need an address. You can get married under a tree somewhere. And so that's all we did, and it was truly beautiful. Very grateful to Scotland for letting us have that.
Right. Well, look, thank you for that. And I should say there's time for questions at the end of this to the ambassadors, just about, about their own perspectives. What does Sarah think, for example, other Italians will make of this? Is this going to be possible to make headlines about Scotland when, let's face it, every country really has quite a lot of their own problems and issues to kind of tackle themselves. But anyway, we'll come to that in a minute. So thank you to Sarah. Our next is Anders Bode Christiansen, who's from Denmark. Hello, Anders.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So what's your reason for getting involved in this?
Yes, my reason for getting involved is sort of a love affair that began when I was little, and my parents had some Scottish friends, and we loved to have them visit. But then the love affair really took off in 2010 when I, as an actor, started working for a Danish theatre company that is named after a Scottish 18th century explorer named Mungo Park. Mungo Park, he traveled to West Africa twice to chart the course of the river Niger, and eventually he died on the second journey. And since the theatre company was named after Mungo Park, we of course had to do a show about Mungo Park, and so we did, and we co-produced this play with a Scottish theatre company named Dogstar Theatre. So with the show, we played the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and subsequently we toured most of Scotland. And I fell in love head over heels with Scotland. And to me, the similarities between the Danes and the Scots are many and significant. Because Denmark is in many regards always someone's younger sibling or tiny neighbor, perhaps you would say. And I think the same goes for Scotland. And knowing that you're little, you're a small country, and someone's tiny neighbor, I think this concept really transcends into the mentality. So you have to be open to the world, you have to be friendly and cooperative. And I really do feel that the Scots know how to keep a humorous, warm blink in their eyes when meeting a stranger. Although we're not strangers to each other, we go way back, we share history. And I do apologize for all the plundering and the Vikings murdering, raping, robbing everyone. Sorry for that. But we share history, we share some language, and most of all, I think we share dreams. And to me, Brexit was a betrayal to all of this, a betrayal to the majority of the Scots. And as a Dane, as a Scandinavian, as a European, I would very much like to welcome Scotland back into the European family.
Wow. I don't know what the Danish for crying is, but is it greeting at all? No, don't know where we get that expression from, but that nearly had me greeting. Oh. Don't worry about it too much.
In Danish, it's called græde.
Yeah, he's getting there.
Yeah, it's close.
But I mean, that was so amazing. With the idea that we share a dream, it's a beautiful, beautiful thought. And I can see lots of messages coming in here from Andrew Richmond, who was saying to Sarah, that was beautiful and heartwarming. From Doreen, it's great to know we have support from so many countries. I love and miss traveling in Europe, but hope to be back. Hector is saying, I love Denmark too, stayed in Frederiksund. Now, we're not having a big travel agency thing going on here, so just stop that. Right, let's have our next speaker, who is Sebastian Vertuso from Romania, who's a cellist, you saw him at the start, and a professor of musicology. Sebastian, thank you so much for that beautiful music at the start, by the way. What brought you into this?
Yes, we cannot leave a country or a simple person outside when it is in trouble. So I feel and I felt that it's a duty to transcend our problems, which every country has, of course, you mentioned before. But we must transcend our problems to can see and to be empath with the problems of other countries, which now are a few very neighbor to Romania, but also to Scotland, which has suffered a great injustice because of Brexit. And Scot people, they wanted very clear to remain in the European Union, and nobody seems to care about their voting and their wishing. So I try to do very little as a single person or a single, but now together with this umbrella of Europe for Scotland, to do much more for gaining a very good destiny for Scottish people and for Scotland to rejoice Europe.
Thanks. Sebastian, have you actually been here? Have you been to Scotland?
No, never. Unfortunately, no. I was just in England, in Aldeburgh, where I met a very warm family, a Scottish family, Niva and James Buchanan, which they were indeed, I was very young, it's happening almost 27 years ago, and they were retired in the medicine field, but they loved us very, very, very much, and they helped us a lot without no problems and without making very important situation about that, but with simplicity and with honestly hearts, they help us. And for them, not just for Scotland's situation, but also for their memory, vivid memory. I stay to help and to do, which is my best thing for Scotland.
Well, thanks to the Buchanans for doing
Yes.
business all that time ago. Seems like one encounter with a warm Scottish family has left quite an impression, which is great.
Yes, it was very nice people, very warm. They said, we are like your parents. We were very young, of course, at that time. And they were very, very warm and very kind people, and very civilized, very high educated. So we have learned a lot from them, and very kind, very kind. It's unbelievable now when I remember. Now it's almost more than 25 years ago.
Right.
I can still remember all this soiree where they invited to their residents to hear music, to discuss philosophy, religion, economy, music, of course. They were very lovely very keen about music.
Well, that obviously struck a bell with you.
Yes.
Well, look, thank you for that, Sebastian.
Yes.
We have now Elise Talleyrand from France, who's a language teacher. She's also treasurer of Yes for EU when she's based in Edinburgh, but she comes originally from France. So that's quite a lot of sort of cross-channel moments there for Elise. Elise, I mean, perhaps that sort of explains some of your own motivation, but why have you got so involved with this, Elise?
Hello, everyone. So I have to apologize because, as with probably everyone on this call, I have many reasons for getting involved in Europe for Scotland, and I chose a bit of a didactic one tonight, so I hope you'll forgive me. I have lots of emotional and personal reasons for joining, but I chose a more reasonable one tonight. So one of my motivations is linked to my professional activity. I'm involved in education, and more specifically in providing training courses for education stakeholders, that's teachers, head teachers, inspectors of education, etc., under, you've guessed it, the Erasmus Plus program. And now it breaks my heart every single day of my working life to think of the lost opportunities for teachers in Scotland from no longer having access to this program. One of the key words in Erasmus Plus is the word dissemination. So I'd like you to think of it that way. When a teacher goes on a professional development course, let's say in France, to learn about the French language and French culture and to learn how to teach languages. And when they return to their classroom, the benefits of such a course will trickle down to their pupils, to their colleagues, to their school, and potentially even beyond that. So when you remove these opportunities, it's the entire school community that suffers, and ultimately, I would say, society as a whole. But what is perhaps, or is also very pertinent to our event tonight, is that with the loss of Erasmus Plus, Scotland can no longer host education staff on the scale that was happening under the Erasmus Plus program. So EU professionals are also missing out. I know from experience how much Scotland has to offer the rest of the EU in terms of its approach to education, its innovative school practices, and the focus on the health and well-being of its pupils. These are highly regarded across the world. And before Brexit, I welcomed to Scotland hundreds of educational staff who wanted to learn about the Scottish education system. And they were able to visit primary and secondary schools. And I can tell you that they were all very impressed by the educational practices that they were seeing in Scotland. And I know for a fact that these visits have helped shape some of the policies and practices that were later implemented in their own schools, local authorities or regions on the continent. So now these doors are closed, and the Scottish people, as well as citizens from across the EU, are all losing out. So I think trying to get these opportunities back for everyone is a cause well worth fighting for, which is what I'm doing.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks for that. Now, just that we managed to get everybody in and then time to have a little chat to you all. Susanna Jantz is with us as well from Germany. Susanna? Can we squeeze Susanna into this crowded virtual waiting room, I wonder? Yeah, here she comes. Susanna.
Hi, everyone. Guten Abend.
It feels a little bit Jeux sans frontières, or a little bit Eurovision, actually.
Oh,
if it
yeah.
was Eurovision, we'd all have our different frocks on, wouldn't we, everybody? And Anders might even have a frock on. Who knows? But anyway, Susanna.
We get to give the points then in the end. We got to discuss that then.
Yeah. So anyway, what's from Germany then? You're an actor, you're an event manager, you're based in Berlin. What on earth makes you interested in Scotland rejoining the EU?
Well, I actually have some Scottish blood in me, and I found that out 8 years ago. I have been in Scotland a couple of times as a tourist over many, many years. And I always felt really like home, especially with the Scottish people. And I felt like I belong in a way. And I thought, yeah, well, it's beautiful nature, very nice people. There was more. And then 8 years ago, I started to do some ancestry work. And I'm half German, half American. And my American side actually comes from Scotland. 1880, they came over to New York and then to Pennsylvania. So when I found that out, it was like eye-opening. It was like, yes, I know now. And I can also relate to Anders when he says we share a lot of history. We share a lot of genes and a lot of language also. So yeah, I think this is what really, this is very emotional then, and what really brought me to love Scotland. And when I heard of Europe for Scotland, I was in from the beginning because it was the word injustice. A lot of people said this tonight, and this was what I felt when the Brexit results came out, and I was very shocked too. And I was also shocked. I just saw it on the news, and I was also shocked to see people in Scotland and also some people in England crying and really devastated. And this broke my heart. And I'm happy to do something or together with the others. And it's so nice to work with the other ambassadors and to find projects. And what drives me the most is that Scotland suffers has so many disadvantages because of Brexit now, economically, educationally, as we heard before, and yeah, also mainly these two, and then on a human basis also. So that's why I'm joining.
And I wonder when the warm feeling that you had, and obviously the things that we share, I mean, that's shared with the whole of Britain. Is it that you really, was it a big wrench to see the whole of Britain leave with Brexit, really? And it does look as if Scotland are the only guys who might find their way back anytime soon.
It was a bit of sadness because the whole of Britain leaves, but mostly because of the 62% in Scotland, the injustice.
Yeah.
I was very shocked that this didn't have any influence, well, to remain. And this was one of the main factors why I was so heartbroken.
Yeah, well, welcome to our world. If you just, you know, it does seem extraordinary to people who work with proportional systems in their governance to see that something can happen like that. But it seems quite hard within Britain to wake up opinion very often south of the border to realize just how weird a thing this is, to drag people out when nations disagree. But anyway, that's what's happened. So thanks for the moment, Susanna. Carlos Arnott is with us as well. And you'll guess from that surname, Arnott, it's not really a very Spanish name, but Carlos is. Are you with us, Carlos? Seems like it's taking just a little minute for people to sort of jump in here. We have just got 2 more folk to hear from. And if you've got any specific questions for these ambassadors, do just, you know, put them in in whatever form of chat you've got, whether it's on, I think we're streaming on loads of different mediums, but whichever way, we can collect them and get them passed to me. So if there's questions, just do go for it. So have we got Carlos with us now? It looks like something. Yeah, there he is. Carlos
Hello.
Arnott. A tale of saltcoats is about to emerge.
Can you hear me?
We can indeed.
Oh, perfect. Hello. Good evening. Leslie, where can I start then?
Well, just why you're interested in supporting Scotland like this?
Well, I think something that has been repeated here. Apart from that, we were talking about justice, but life, you know, we cannot just measure in terms of justice or injustice. Nevertheless, my family is from Scotland. I've been visiting Scotland since I was very little. I've got family there. I've got even family from there that they've moved away after Brexit. Yeah. My uncle Ellen moved from Edinburgh to France. I've got also friends from different parts that they moved out because they thought it was, you know, a brighter future for them and perhaps their children, and things that they have been enjoying all these years. Scotland has been part of the European Union for more than 40 years. And then all of a sudden, they've been stripped away from something that they had when they voted to leave. So kind of, I reckon that Scottish people have been ignored in their expression, their will. And I think, it touches me personally, my family, my friends, and whatever I may do to tell people what's happening. And if in the future Scotland decided to become part of the European Union again, people could welcome them because they know actually what happened, and that they didn't want to leave. They were forced to leave, which makes 62% of the population wanted to remain in Scotland. And obviously, seeing many people from Scotland not giving up on that and still fighting to get back. I don't know, Alan Smith's speech in the European Parliament, for instance, was very touching. All these things, how can you not? It is that's my question. It is I couldn't. If I can help in any way, I will do it. It's part of me, and I think it's good for the Scottish people. It's good for the all the European countries. It is good for students. It's good for researchers. It's good for any type of workers to have the rights that they had before. And I think that we just need to continue fighting for it and not giving up. That's a whole thing. So to me, it's as plain as the nose in front of my face.
Right. That's brilliant, Carlos. Just because you're in Spain, what we often hear is that Spain might veto Scotland's entry because it doesn't want to encourage breakaway countries because of the situation in Catalonia and perhaps to a less extent with the Basque countries. What do you think about that? Do you find anybody brings this up?
I mean, obviously, you're bringing this up, and might be that some of the people, they could think that way. I think we are talking about different scenarios, and we should analyze this differently. That shouldn't be the reason. We're talking about different things, and that's why I don't see that as a reason. I don't think they should go that way. I personally haven't really come across that. That might be a fear that some people are holding, but I have never heard that people might get scary because of Scotland being a country perhaps deciding at some point to leave a union. Yeah, they've been in that union for since 18th century, beginning of 18th century, but might be that reason enough to perhaps have considered if they want to continue. So yeah, I haven't heard it. Could be, but it's different things. So I don't think we should address them in the same way.
Yes, indeed. In fact, I was over. I was taken over the day before the Catalans declared independence to do a BBC World debate, supporting the Catalan speaker, and an academic who was quite a venerated academic, who was a law professor, came up and spoke at the end. Came up to me, and he'd argued on the other side, and he said, "You guys should understand in Scotland that we see you quite differently." Partly because you were a nation, you were, you had constituted nationhood before the union began. He gave quite a lot of reasons, which I have to say, a lot of the Catalans standing there would actually argue with. But nonetheless, maybe we'll have a different kind of experience this time. But certainly last time, it seemed that Spain was ready to use a veto. But anyway, let's see if we get further into the discussion, because we've got one more ambassador to go, and then see if anyone wants to bring these points up. Thanks to Carlos. Joanna Kopaczyk from Poland is a senior lecturer in Scots and English at Glasgow University. So where are you coming from tonight, Joanna? Are you here or there?
Yes, I'm in Glasgow. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here on the show. So my reasons, I guess, really chime with what everybody has already said. But what I can also add from my perspective, why I care about Scotland being taken out of the European Union against its will, is because I grew up behind the Iron Curtain. I know what it's like to have Europe divided by artificial political borders and boundaries. And that was my experience when I was growing up. And then once the wall came down, one of the first countries I was really, really eager to visit was Britain. Because I had started learning English and I was really curious about the culture and everything. So I went on a tour of Britain for 3 weeks, camping in July in England and Scotland, which wasn't a great idea because of the weather. But nevertheless, I had the best experience, and I really warmed up to not Britain sort of just because it was something unknown, but actually I recognized a lot of things that we had in common. And I recognized the historical links between, in particular, Scotland and Poland. So this is something that led me to have my academic career steered towards these topics. And this is what brought me to where I am today. So as I said, I'm tuning in from Glasgow, where I found myself in the middle of Brexit, and I felt absolutely devastated. And I feel that every day when I think about my Scottish friends and my Polish family and all the European people who really want to see Scotland back among our midst. And from a very selfish point of view, I would like to be able to send parcels and letters to my family in Poland without having to fill in some stupid tax forms and customs duty. So, all these practicalities have become really quite cumbersome. But I think more importantly, I still believe in the democratic process. I think these things are reversible. It's not like it's a done deal. I think we should be talking about it. I think we should be campaigning. We should be very vocal about the fact that, as I said, it's not a done deal, and we can still reverse it, I hope.
Right. Well, look, thank you all very much. I'm seeing questions coming in, but a lot of them are more about this strategy for the actual campaign, which is something we're just about to come on to, except one. And I just wonder if a couple of you have views on this one. Hamish Norbrook is asking, any ideas for what we as individual Scots, I presume, should be doing? I mean, is there anything we could be doing that basically raises the profile of Scotland in your countries? Because as I said at the start, you've got a cost of living crisis. You've got the same problems of trying to decouple from Russia and from supplies from Russia. This is not an ideal time. We're still all coming out of COVID. How easy do you think it will be for Scotland to make any kind of headlines in your country? And then that question, how can Scots manage to do something here that attracts attention in your country? Anybody want to go? This is the toughest question of the night, by the way. They all get easier from here. Sarah.
What I would say is that it's not necessarily your job to make headlines in our countries. Like, that is kind of what we're here to do. We have press contacts, and we know local celebrities, small or medium, and raising awareness in our own countries is for us to do. What you really have to do on your side of the pond, as they say, is, well, make sure you go vote, number one, if the referendum happens, and don't give in to fear, I would say, because all the reasons to be hesitant about voting for independence are legitimate, and I understand them. But that would truly be a disaster if, after all this effort and all the love that we are here to share for you, and then, you were like, but I don't know, and you give in to fear, and then nothing changes. I mean, it's always about taking some risks, but I genuinely cannot imagine that you would be left on your own if you went independent, that Europe would turn its back on you. Now, it's our job to try and make that message clear. But yeah, just do your part. If you know anyone who is a bit hesitant, talk to them. If you convince one person, then they convince someone else. Like, everything can happen.
Great. Anybody else?
Yeah, just to add to that, I think it's important to talk to your representatives, to your democratic representatives, and make them aware of the issues you're facing, and make them realize that they should be campaigning on your behalf.
Yep, that would work well if anybody listened, actually. I mean, we have the situation where we had practically 52 out of our 59 MPs to London were SNP, and they have all been roundly ignored in practically everything, which is what's the frustrating thing here. But still, we are hopefully at the beginning of a referendum campaign that should happen next year. Do any of the other ambassadors have something to say? Yeah, Sebastian?
Just a few words to Scottish people. Do not fear, you are not alone.
Right. Elise?
Yeah, I was just going to emphasize, as Sarah's saying, I would say just campaign in Scotland as much as you can with all the Yes group is what, it's what Scottish people should be doing. There's lots of Yes groups out there. Yes for EU, of which I'm a member, is one of them, but there's also lots of other Yes organizations that you can get involved with.
Right. Carlos, Susanna, anything to say? Just not wanting to leave you out, but you don't want to put you on the spot.
No, totally. I'm more than happy. What to say? I mean, just look backwards. 45% against 55% before the Brexit. So what has happened ever since? A lot of impact. How's the situation nowadays? Look what's happening in London. Just check out what do you want for yourselves and for the future. The other countries in Europe are just with open arms, just hoping Scotland to get back to European Union. So hopefully, that warmth is also going to be felt, and that's going to perhaps change some minds that are a little bit undecided.
Yep, thank you. And Joanna, last word to you.
Was it Susanna?
Susanna, I'm sorry, I was reading a text that I mean to read to Joanna, but anyway, Susanna, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I'm on another level. You're doing so much already. This is why we're here, because you're the people that you are, and you're have so much positive influence, and everybody here in Germany who loves Scotland and has been there a couple of times just love you as people, and just stay like this. Just be like you are and stay like this. We have a lot of, just for example, we have so many Scottish country dancing societies. I've been joining one last year, so for a while. So there's so much going on. I guess in other European countries too. So just stay as you are, stay positive and hopeful.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, that's such beautiful messages. And actually, the reason I got confused is I was just reading a message from Morag Williamson, who says to Joanna, I'm so sorry about the shameful way the UK government is treating EU folk like yourself. Once independent, we will establish a welcoming, not a hostile environment for all new Scots. So amen to that. So look, thank you so much to all the ambassadors. I'm not sure if you now disappear completely or not, but what we're going to do in the meantime is just have a sneak preview from Billy Kay of a film that he is about to release, which is about Scotland's historic ties with Europe. So here we go.
Welcome to Scotland. My name is Billy Kay. and I'm a writer and broadcaster and author of the book The Scottish World. Scotland is, and always was, a proud European nation. When David I, King of Scots, spoke to the inhabitants of his cities in the 12th century, they were addressed as Scotis et Anglis, Frankis et Flemingis, Scots, English, French and Flemish. So we have been a multinational, multilingual European country from our very beginnings. For centuries, trade between Scotland and European nations brought prosperity and cultural riches. One of the few artefacts we have from the patriot hero William Wallace is a letter to the city of Lubeck, then capital of the Hanseatic League, a medieval forerunner of the EU, which stretched from Tallinn in the east to Groningen in the west. Keen to see merchants from cities like Riga and Hamburg return to ports like Aberdeen and Dundee, Wallace informed the Hanseatic capital that Scotland was open for trade once again after liberation from English occupation. We had substantial Scottish merchant communities in European ports like Bergen and Bordeaux, Gothenburg and Gdansk, and as far east as Kėdainiai in Lithuania. In Poland, Scots formed a benevolent and self-help organisation called the Scottish Brotherhood, which had branches in 12 Polish cities. The Danish port of Elsinore not only had a thriving Scottish community, but the Lisle family were provosts of the town and directors of the Sound Toll. The Low Countries too attracted Scottish ships, merchants and migrants, and you can see their legacy in places like the Scottish Quay in Bruges in Belgium and the Scottish staple port in Fare, a little piece of Scotland in the Netherlands, and proudly celebrating that connection in the Scots Houses Museum to this day. As well as granting dual nationality for citizens of both countries, one of the major economic benefits of the Old Alliance between Scotland and France were privileges in the wine trade. The red wine of Bordeaux, called claret, became the national drink and bound Scotland and France so closely it was called the bloodstream of the Old Alliance.
Well, that looks like it'll be absolutely brilliant when it comes. And having done a book festival with Billy, it is absolutely astonishing. There's not a place in Europe where he hasn't been able to find really strong cultural ties from history and ones that still endure. So what we're doing now is just to move on to a bit of discussion of the strategy that Europe for Scotland has. And for those who are watching who think you want to be part of this or support this, this is really what's going to happen over the next year, and you can decide if you want to get further involved. Let's have on the stage, as it were, Nina Jeter. Are you back with us, Nina? And Andrea Pissarro, who is the Europe for Scotland combo, and also Jane McKinnon, who's an editor and translator and one of the French team, who's going to talk a little bit about the French activities. There's a lot of noise from someone. I'm not sure. I think it's Andrea. It might be you again. So have we got Jane to come on? Is she coming on at this point? Well, anyway, while she's appearing, well, just what did you make of everything that you heard there? I mean, I'm seeing a text in or message from Joe Toole watching, who's saying, "This is wonderful, such supportive and intelligent contributions. It's really lifting my spirits." And you actually were texting me, Nina, with just the comments that Spain has made about an independent Scotland. So you might as well say it while you're here.
Yes, so that's an important thing, that Spain is actually not going to stand in the way of Scotland rejoining the EU.
Nina, you're quite quiet. Sorry to interrupt, but just if you could either get closer to your laptop, or else Kevin, can you boost Nina at all? Right, try again, Nina. It's okay, we can hear you, but just not, as full as one would like.
So it was importantly pointed out, actually, also by another one of our ambassadors, Bob Hastings, who's one of our Spanish ambassadors as well, Scott living in Spain. And he rightly pointed out that the Spanish government is not going to stand in the way of Scotland rejoining the EU as long as it is, like, the referendum, the independence referendum, is conducted in a legal manner, which of course is the plan of the Scottish government.
Yes, and if anybody, well, we will probably not get into that tonight, because that is a huge, difficult question, which hopefully will get a little bit more flesh on the bones from Nicola Sturgeon on Tuesday. But anyway, let's just talk about the strategy that Europe for Scotland has then, because what you're trying to do essentially is to try to get, it sounds like the EU kind of get bodies, the Council of Ministers, perhaps the Commission, perhaps the Parliament, warmed up to try to get an early statement from them, hopefully, when the referendum kicks off. What's the strategy for all of that, Nina?
Yes, so if I can go back a little bit, I'm just going to go back to last year when the Scottish elections happened, because of course we published our letter before that, and we didn't know what would be the result. But then it was clear that there is a majority in Scotland for independence. Another referendum is going to take place. And one thing that I found really heartbreaking about the Brexit referendum is how uninformed the electorate was. I mean, everyone was being lied to. No one knew what they were voting for. And with the independence referendum in Scotland, of course, we cannot have a repetition of that. There will be a litany of lies, I'm sure, in British tabloid press about, chances to rejoin the EU, and probably, as we were just discussing, lies about Spain's stance, etc. So we felt it is absolutely vital that there is clarity from the side of the EU, so that Scottish voters have some facts on the table that counter any lies that might be spread. And as a result, like what we did last year was, of course, we started out as this really small group of people, and we have such ambitious goals, wanting to get the EU Parliament to take a stance, wanting national politicians to speak out. So we put out a call to people that had signed our petition last year and asked for volunteers if they could, come on board, advise our campaign, help us in different countries. And we were absolutely overwhelmed with how many responses we got. It was absolutely delightful. And we have recruited now more than 50 people from 17 European countries, and we have national teams in, I think, 15 European countries. We have an EU lobbying team, and we also have a team of cultural ambassadors that are planning activities. And for instance, that film clip that you just saw by Billy Kay, that is actually something that, things like that is what we were working on in the cultural team. Because, of course, there's two ways to win hearts or change minds in Europe. One is the intellectual route, to put forward all the clever arguments and documents with our strategy but then the other is just kind of going straight to the heart, being very not necessarily reasonable, but just really emotional. So that's kind of the work that the cultural ambassadors will be doing. It's kind of like a team effort with various different branches working together.
Yeah, I always think if we could just collect all the pipers in Scotland and just get them to just go around all the European capitals, it would probably, it's so stirring. In fact, they could go around our own cities too. But anyway, let's talk to Jane McKinnon, who I mentioned is an editor and translator and is part of the French team. So Jane, just what's your own background actually? McKinnon, are you a total Scot? And you'll need to unmute, lass.
About that. Sorry about that. How much time do you have, Leslie?
Okay.
So, yes, born in Dingwall, and the essential formative years in Scotland before we moved to Nova Scotia in Canada. So that explains the little quirk of the accent. But I don't know. Canada, as you know, has a bilingual, bicultural mindset. And so when I ultimately decided to move to France, nothing was more natural. And it seemed to me that there was an enormous complicity already between my Scottish background, my Canadian background, and living in France. So I have made my life in France, but not all of my molecules are in France. And I would dearly have loved to have been able to vote in the 2014 referendum, in the 2016 referendum. I could not, but it gives me great joy to be able to participate in this enterprise, which is supportive of Scotland, regardless of what Scotland decides. It is a positive, forward-moving exercise. It's reflective of both Europe and of Scotland's values, which are generous and forward-looking and outward-looking, and that's why I answered the call.
Right. Now, there's a question that's coming from Joan Benson. I wonder what you think of this. She said, I heard during a discussion between two prominent UK political players this week that in the EU, there is no real appreciation that Scotland is separate to England. Do you think in France people understand that Scotland is a separate nation?
Wow, Joan, that's a really interesting question. That's a very sensitive, culturally sensitive question, I think. I think that there is a political reality of the UK, and so Scotland's position is anchored within that political reality, and that beyond that there is a historical and cultural and even social reality of all of the ties between, for example, France. I can only speak for France. I cannot speak for Europe, but France and Scotland, we have extraordinary crossovers from the 13th century to the 15th century to the 18th, 19th centuries. It's extraordinary. And the more I'm involved in this, and that's what's so delicious about this whole enterprise for me, is that I am learning, and therefore I'm just so happy to give of my time to this. So that historical reality, and I think socially, Scotland is much more collectively and collective and solidarity minded country, and in that way, it is also very much aligned with France. And finally, culturally, we just have so many crossroads. We shared monarchs for a brief moment, but beyond that, we share music, we share art, we share political discourse, we share the Enlightenment. So it is rich, and I would say that there may be a kind of technocratic outer layer that may respect the current boundaries, but underneath, the water runs deep, just as it does in Loch Ness, from my own part of the land, I would have to say.
Right. And so tell us then, what kind of things are the French group thinking of doing? What do you discuss? What are your ideas for action?
Oh, well, thank you. It's amazing. This is the first experience for me being involved in a group that is part of a grassroots organization. The whole impetus is to develop enthusiasm from the landscape horizontally, But the first thing that happens when you come together, and first of all, thank you, Nina, Andrea, for everything that you've done in organizing and creating this framework within which we can act. And also Sarah has created technological platforms that enable us to communicate with each other so that we're not reinventing the wheel. First of all, you have to discover who you are. This is a specific team. There are more or less a dozen of us. I'm one of 2 Scots on the team, and the important thing is to define, first of all, our priorities, and we decided very early on we needed to define a vision. What is our vision? Namely, what is the end goal? And also, what is our mission and how do we get there? So the end goal has to be that Scotland knows that it will be welcomed back into Europe if it so decides. And the mission is to develop that grassroots movement that can support that rise of enthusiasm. So you're seeing a picture here from, guess what? I mean, I did not organize this. This is part of life in France. Anyway, this is a festival, L'Île-sur-Sorgue. Bravo. That's a terrible picture, by the way. But it's a Franco-Scottish festival that was created this year. And it was very moving for me to arrive and see, first of all, it was about a 1.5 kilometer lineup of people waiting to get in with their own tartans already ready. That was incredible. And in the gates as you entered, there was there were banners of Saltire flags in just the heart of France. This was moving to me. I mean, before joining Europe for Scotland, I didn't look out for any of this stuff. And now suddenly I've begun to look out and I see, like all of the layers of a millefeuille pastry, flaky pastry, there's all of this incredible rich filling of enthusiasm and joy in the Franco-Scottish culture. And so this is one manifestation of that. And they organized this festival. They had over 2,000 people. And bravo to them, because they took a risk and it was wonderful. And I think so many people respond really positively to it. So that's one manifestation of just that underlayer, that cultural underlayer that I was talking about. There's another festival coming up for anyone who wants to come over, and it's in a very special place called Aubigny-sur-Ner. I'm sure we can, in the recording, we can put in a link in the description. They are having, I think it's they've had this festival for over 30 years. It's a Franco-Scottish festival. It lasts 3 days. It's from the 15th to the 17th of July. And speaking of pipe bands, Leslie, you mentioned pipe bands earlier on. Well, this is where it happens. There are pipe bands from all over Europe. And so it gives you a sense of the tremendous diversity of the enthusiasm for Scotland. Even on our own team, I have to say, we have people from all different parts of France, including, and beyond France, including my friend Elise in Edinburgh, whom you met. And so it shows that the community is larger than perhaps a technocratic reality. So this festival welcomes between 20,000 and 30,000 people who come, and it's just one manifestation of what we share between the two countries. So in terms, I will branch out a little bit towards what we are doing in our own group in France. As I mentioned, it was important to establish what was our vision and our mission. And after that, what's really crucial is the arguments, because we are thinking in terms of not what do we each individually want. I know what my position is for Scotland, but what about Scotland by itself and all of those who will be voting in the near future during this transition? It's important for Scotland to be able to make the best possible decision. And so to quote Nina and Andre in one of the articles that I saw them quoted in, they mentioned it was kind of sad that Europe did not speak up during the Brexit referendum, and perhaps it might be a lesson for Europe during the next referendum for Scottish independence, that Europe not stay so silent. And I want to be part of bringing the voice of Europe to Scotland to let Scotland know that we're standing with Scotland.
Brilliant. That's great to hear. And actually, just Elise does just come back with a comment herself on the question I asked you about what European groups are working on, and this question about whether or not EU citizens are aware that Scotland and England are really quite distinct, and particularly distinct in their approach, their voting during the Brexit referendum. She's saying that that's one of the things European groups are working on to dispel this assumption. Tanya in the Italian group is producing a leaflet aimed at Europeans to tackle precisely this misconception. So there's another of the things that are going on. Andrea, can you give us an idea of the EU lobbying? What's that going to be all about?
Yes, of course, that's the most serious and ambitious part of the plan, if you want, because we want to convince EU politicians to speak out and say clearly what they think about Scotland rejoining. And we can tell you already there were a couple of questions about that we are in touch with a number of MEPs. And if you ask an MEP, what do they think about Scotland rejoining? They say it's a no-brainer. Of course, they would love Scotland to rejoin for number of reasons, including the fact that they remember as well the speech of Alan Smith, and they have good relationship with the Scottish colleagues, but also because they understand it would be the end of Brexit and Scotland could bring a lot of good things. But at the same time, in the European Union, there is this kind of internal policy of not interfering with the internal affairs of another country. And that's what we want to challenge, because one thing is to think that Scotland should be welcome back. Another thing is to say that Scotland should be welcome back. And so what we want to do is to convince the MEP that they should speak out. And the way in which we want to do this is to produce what we call a citizens report, which is our attempt to say to bring into the European Parliament the voices of European citizens that want Scotland back, and add to that the politics of it and the imaginative reasons why we think it's good for the EU. Some of these reasons were mentioned earlier. There is a lot that can be very good for Scotland to rejoin. For instance, the energy reserves. Scotland has 60% of the total oil reserves of the entire Europe, 25% of the offshore wind. These are things that we want to make sure that all MEPs know by heart. We want to remind them as well, a very important thing from my perspective at the moment, that we are in a very turbulent international situation with Russia threatening the international order. Having Scotland as a bastion of the rule of law in the EU is very important, because also there are problems in some Eastern European countries like Hungary and other countries that Russia might want to destabilize. So Scotland could be a very strong country that can help have a very strong resistance in terms of international order. And then, of course, the best universities, among the best universities in Europe are in Scotland. So we want to put all these reasons into a report that we're going to send to all MEPs, and we're going to try to convince them that they need to speak out. And the way to do that is to pass a resolution in the European Parliament that we would like them to discuss at the beginning of next year, so that can lead up towards the referendum in autumn. And in writing this report, we want to start a dialogue with the Scottish civil society, with Scottish pro-European campaigns. We would like to, because there is a lot that has been done already, a lot of research, a lot of documents. So we want to put all this research together. We want to do that in dialogue also with the European civil society from different countries, and of course with our ambassadors. And there is an amazing group of EU lobbyists that are in Brussels that have a lot of skills and competencies. I want to name Alistair Gray, that has been working a lot in these past few months to develop this plan. And our idea is that if we get the ball rolling in the European Parliament, then the government will follow, because it's something that it will become discussed, it will be talked through in the Brussels bubble with all the newspapers and think tanks. And then eventually a journalist will ask a question to Macron or to van der Leyen, and they will be forced to say something. And so we get this ball rolling and we try to make it roll just ahead of the referendum so that we hear something from the EU.
Right. Well, can I just chuck in a few of the questions that have been asked? I mean, one is saying, how long would it realistically take before Scotland actually gets back into the EU? This is from Gemma. We'd have to have official candidate status, then numerous criteria to meet before they even let us in the club. We can see the damage Brexit's done to Scotland, but with Brexit, plus an exit from the UK, we might be on our own for a long time.
Well, that's precisely what we want to challenge, if you want, because in a way, Scotland has been part of the EU for 47 years. There is no question whatsoever that it respects the Copenhagen criteria, which are the criteria set by the EU to see whether a country can join. These are criteria about the rule of law, whether the economy is sound, whether the democratic system is sound, rights are respected. Of course, Scotland respects all of this. So there is no question that a candidate status can be given to Scotland pretty soon. Then it's about the negotiation with you. And if there is goodwill on both sides, the negotiation period can be shortened up significantly. And what we want to convince the European Parliament to say is something obvious, that if a country has been part of the EU for a long time, well, it should not prove that all is done from scratch. It's a country that already has the acquis, as they say in Brussels. And so we think that within a couple of years, it's reasonable. Go.
I think it's also important to say, I just wanted to briefly mention two things. One is Finland. It took 3 years for Finland. Finland had never been a member of the EU before and dragged out against its will. So, like similar country, comparable in many ways, but not in that one, which is to Scotland's advantage. The other thing I wanted to mention briefly is Ukraine. In terms of Ukraine, the EU right now is making a decision based on values. They are not saying that Ukraine should join because that's going to be great for the EU economy, that's going to strengthen the euro, or any of that. No, it's a value decision. And that's our argument as well with Scotland. But we have two sides where Scotland has very strong arguments in its favor. One is in terms of values, like people all across Europe hate Brexit, and there are horrible people all across Europe as well who want to dismantle the EU, who want to move in a very dark nationalist direction. It's going to be quite impactful if there is a country that was impacted by Brexit, like Scotland, wanting to rejoin, which proves to people all over Europe that Brexit is not working. So that is super effective and a very effective value-based argument for Scotland. But then we have all of the other arguments for Scotland: renewable energy, fantastic universities. Like we've been told by one of our Italian ambassadors, who's a professor in Italy, and she says all her students want to go and do Erasmus now in Ireland because they speak English, but they don't have that many universities in Ireland that all these people from all over Europe can go to. And Scotland has almost 40 amazing universities. So, there's like a whole range of arguments that we are going to put together in our document and really make the case that we want to sell to all the politicians, but also to the general European public. Not that I think that they need convincing so much. They are already probably many in favor. But we want to really lay out all these strengths that Scotland has, all these advantages for the EU, and really it's only a win-win situation. And the only reason I think why the EU is silent is because they are scared a little bit to offend Westminster. That is the only aspect. It's nothing else. No, there's no other problem. And that is something that, of course, needs to be handled very sensitively. But I think, again, there we have strong arguments as well, because, of course, we have lots of English supporters that are saying, actually, this would be the right thing also for England. That would be good for democracy in the entirety of UK.
And I can just see as well that Elise has messaged in to say that the association agreement with the EU would run in parallel with negotiating the exit from the UK. Both could take effect at the same time. And she says the record for full accession process is 2.5 years. And Sarah says, excellent, Nina, which indeed that was. Let me just chuck another difficult question, which is the question of EFTA as an alternative to EU membership. This is coming from Jeff Bush, who says, I'm in favour of joining EFTA. Now, this is the European Free Trade Association, who are the other European trade kids on the block. In fact, the UK was part of EFTA until 1973. Largely, EFTA didn't want to have institutions, didn't want to integrate, and ended up with, I think, just 4 members at the moment: Iceland, Norway, Switzerland, and Liechtenstein, the Alps and the Nordics. But what it manages to do then, it can access the single market. It doesn't have to abide by the institutions of the EU, and it's not in the gosh, I'm just suddenly forgetting actually what the difference is. It's not in the customs union. So there's a few things that look like they're advantages. So let's just get Jeff's question. I'm in favour of joining EFTA, not the EU, as soon as we're independent, which we're assured by direct contact with EFTA could be achieved in a few months. Quickly thereafter, we would have access to the European Economic Area and could trade freely with all EU countries under that agreement. Thus, like other EFTA member states, that's like Norway, Iceland, etc., we have the upside of free access to the EU market and they to ours, without the downside of lengthy negotiations. A further massive advantage of being an EFTA member is that EFTA and the UK have a free trade agreement. So as an EFTA member, Scotland would have a free trade agreement with England. So the question, should Scotland join EFTA and consider the EU later?
Well, of course, it's a debate worth having, I would say. From our standpoint, we don't want to decide for Scotland. We are an independent campaign that tackles the European side of things, if you want. So we want to convince the EU to offer Scotland a membership. Then it's up to the Scottish people to make their mind. I can only add this, that as Europeans, we would love to hear Scottish accents in Brussels. We would love to have some Scottish sense in the decision that matters. And that's also probably relevant, that it's true that EFTA grant you some degree of access to the single market, but there are still some hurdles because it's not in the customs union. And most importantly, from my perspective, Scotland would not take part in the big decisions that are taken in the EU. And you were mentioning there are only 4 countries in EFTA. In fact, most of the founding members of EFTA have left EFTA to join the EU. Austria, Denmark, Portugal, Sweden, precisely because they want to have more access to the big decision that matters. But this said, it's a decision for the Scots to make. We can only say to the EU politicians, please help the Scots to rejoin. And, of course, this kind of lobby to the EU helps also for EFTA, because it's everything has a process and everything takes some time. And it's not either or. You can start this process at the same time while you make up your mind. And as we said earlier, entry to the EU doesn't need to be a long process necessarily. It can be something that can be negotiated in parallel. And then if there is a good deal on offer, you can go for it. That would be my...
Can I just
Nina?
quickly 2 things? One was that I just wanted to applaud people in Scotland for the discussions that they're having. I think, like these discussions did not take place prior to the Brexit referendum. And I think it's absolutely great that there is so much knowledge about how the EU works, how EFTA works, and there's a healthy democratic debate. As Andre said, we are not taking sides. It's not for us to decide. But I wanted to bring up one thing that our friend Gordon McIntyre, Ken from Business in Scotland, Believe in Scotland, did a study earlier this year where he was surveying people who were switching in their support from a no vote for independence in 2014 to a yes vote now. And he found that 97% of them were in favor of rejoining the EU. So from a pragmatic point of view, I think that is something that probably in this debate should be borne in mind, that if it makes the difference between winning or losing a referendum, that should probably be a factor to be considered.
My God, Nina, you're good. You're a good girl. You've got it all there.
She is good, isn't she?
Yeah, we need to wheel you up here when we get to the referendum. Both of you, we need you all here. But just because we're just beginning to come to the end of our time here, it's just to let people know how long this, we're not going to go on for very much longer. But it is to just try to make, well, this does need some money to be able to do, particularly the idea of the lobbying in Brussels and in different countries. So there is a kind of fundraising pitch, which will now, I don't know which one of you will give this one a go. Nina, Andrea?
I think we can both say a little bit. But yes, basically, we've been around, obviously, for more than a year. And we haven't really asked for, we haven't done a crowdfunder before, because of course we were just like run by volunteers and we weren't doing such serious stuff. We came up with a lot of plans, but what we want to do now is really ambitious. So yes, we need money to go to Brussels to lobby politicians. For instance, we need to cover travel costs. And, you know, we need to book event spaces to host events. There was like a bunch of things that's all listed on our website that we are fundraising for. We've been extremely lucky in that the fact that we've won 2 major grants, like at least major for us. It's like £10,000 we won from the Scottish Independence Foundation, specifically for our EU lobbying team. But we would like to match those funds to really be able to carry out our plans, because of course, you know, we are competing for attention with organizations that have completely different kind of funds behind them than we do. And the other thing that we're very proud of is that we also won a grant from a UK-wide network, which is again important to us because it demonstrates also that what we're doing is actually not bad for England. So yeah, we are again asking to match that donation also for our national efforts, because of course we also want to lobby national politicians. We want to create more cultural content, but actually, instead of me talking so much about this, please visit our website. We have listed everything that we want to do, every way that we want to spend that money, and we also have some really cool rewards that we came up with for those of you that donate.
Right, and Andrea?
Yeah, I would just add that everything you have seen so far has been mostly 100% done by the work of volunteers. And now we all realize things are getting serious because the referendum campaign has started. There is a date almost, and we need to get serious as well. We need to be able to look serious to Brussels. So we need to increase the number of signatories in Europe. We need to get our videos to be seen by Europeans across. There are 500 million Europeans that need to watch our videos and to need to write to their MPs. So we need money for that. So any help you can give us, it's really appreciated. And any support that you can give us to dream of an independent European Scotland, really, because this is what we want to do together. So thank you very much for everything you can do. And
yeah, and and I imagine people could actually sign the letter as well. I mean, the letter's still online, isn't it?
Yes. So I would say like 4 ways that you can help us, like sign our letter, spread the word about our campaign. If you want to get involved as a volunteer, get in touch. We are still recruiting more people. We're happy for that. And of course, the fourth thing, donation, if you can afford it. Of course, you know, we know there's a cost of living crisis and, you know, but yeah, if you can help us, that would be fantastic.
Great. Okay. Well, you see the well, this just disappeared there, but you see the yep, there it is again. EuropeForScotland.com, and just keep plowing on. It's maddening because I can see in the chat the exact way that you can get onto the support page, but it hasn't found its way onto that banner. So anyway, you're not daft. Come on, folk. You're pretty literate on these matters. So just go on, have a shifty, and get to the page of the support. If you know people, there's still some European countries that need more contacts. So you could also come up with good people that you know would be willing to help. All of that will help Andrea and Nina kind of get the network strengthened. And it looks like the French probably don't need an awful lot of strengthening, but there are some countries that maybe just are, at the moment, are just one person. So all of that would be brilliant. And if you do actually, I mean, it might not be the case that it's very easy for people to make individual donations, but it's very often the case that people can think perhaps of an organization or a company or any grouping that has a strong pro-European profile that operates from Scotland. Anything that you think might, they might be able to come up with some money. I'm not quite doing a Bob Geldof here, but give us your cash, or at least give the contacts that you think might be able to come up with some cash, because these folk have already put their heads over the parapet and they didn't need to. None of them needed to do this. So, it'll be a terrible thing if we get to the stage where we've got a whole bunch of Europeans who are ready to put their heads over the parapet for Scotland, and we're still sitting around here kind of fiddling and waiting to do something else. So that I think takes us just about to the end of our time here. There are loads of questions and comments that have come in that are just too difficult to kind of pile them on in and turn them around, except really with people just at the beginning, I think, so blown away actually by the rational and emotional arguments put forward by our EU contributors tonight, which has really made everybody feel massively perked up on a day which is otherwise a bit of a grim legacy for Scotland. So please have a look for all of that on the website. And we're going to end now, I think, with something a little bit stirring that some of you from Scotland might just find familiar.